Good afternoon, everyone. Dear students, today we will continue reading Bird, a story written by A.J. Cronin. This is chapter 7 from our book Snapshots, and this is part 2. Last time we mentioned that this chapter is an extract from one of Cronin's best-known works, The Citadel. In Bird, the author describes how Andrew Manson, a young doctor, made frantic efforts to save nearly a stillborn child. Dr. Andrew Manson is one of the main characters. He is a young medical graduate working in a small mining town of Blenheim. On the call of Joe Morgan, a driller and a miner, he manages to help in a very difficult situation. He manages to help in a difficult birth and saves the baby's life due to his knowledge and efforts. So Joe Morgan is another character. He is Susan's husband. Susan is delivering. Another character is Susan Morgan's mother. She's about 70 years old and she's very concerned about her daughter's happiness. And another character is the midwife, who proves to be quite pessimistic about the child's survival. These are four main characters: Dr. Andrew Manson, Joe Morgan, Susan Morgan's mother, and the midwife. The story begins with Dr. Andrew Manson returning from a disappointing evening with Christine, the girl he loves. He meets Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan has been waiting for him outside his home for about an hour, and upon seeing the doctor, he feels quite relaxed. He informed that the doctor was needed at their home as his wife was expecting to deliver a baby. Joe Morgan and his wife, Susan Morgan, have been married for about 20 years. So Dr. Andrew asks him to wait, and he goes inside, gets his medical bag, and they both set out for Joe Morgan's house. Upon reaching Joe Morgan's house, Joe decides to stay outside, and he requests Dr. Andrew to go inside alone. Dr. Andrew proceeds inside. Through a narrow staircase, the doctor reaches a small, clean, but poorly furnished room. There he finds two women beside the patient. One is Susan Morgan's mother, and the other one is the elderly midwife. Susan's mother offers him a cup of tea. Dr. Andrew senses that she didn't want him to leave until everything was over. Although he was quite tired, he decides to stay. An hour later, Dr. Andrew went to check the patient, and he came down. He could hear the restless footsteps of Joe Morgan walking outside. Dr. Andrew was so deep in his thoughts about Christine and about some marriages which were failures that the voice of the old lady, Susan Morgan's mother, surprised him. Susan said not to give her the chloroform if it would harm the baby. She's awful set upon this child, Dr. Ba. This is what the old lady said. She said, Susan said not to give her the chloroform. The chloroform means a colorless liquid used as a solvent and formerly as a general anesthetic. Anesthetic means narcotic, a substance that includes insensitivity to pain or numbing. So she said that Susan, her daughter who is delivering, she said not to give her this anesthetic if it would harm the baby, if it would do some damage. She's awful set upon this child, Dr. Ba. We said Ba means dear. To be set upon means she's very attached. She cares a lot. She wants this baby very much. She's awful set upon this child. Awful means horrible, terrible, or unpleasant. Here it means very much, a lot. Her old eyes warmed at a sudden thought. She added in a low tone, we all are, I fancy. Her old eyes warmed. They became warm. They looked more warm at this sudden thought. Sudden means unexpected. This was an unexpected thought. And then she added in a low tone, we all are, I fancy. Means yes. Yes, we all are, I fancy. Yes, we all are wanting this baby very much. I fancy means I assume or I agree. Here it means I believe. I believe we all are wanting this baby very much. He collected himself with an effort. It won't do any harm, the anesthetic, he said kindly. They'll be all right. He, the doctor, collected himself. To collect or to compose oneself means to pull yourself together, to recover or to regain your composure. He said, it won't do any harm. It will not harm. The anesthetic will not harm the baby or the mother. He said in a kind way. They both will be all right. Here, the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock, which now showed 3:30. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. At this moment, he could hear the nurse's voice. The nurse was calling from the top landing. Top landing means the area at the top of the staircase which has rooms leading off it. He heard the nurse's voice and he decided to begin his work. He looked at the clock. It was showing 3:30. He rose, he got up and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. To perceive means to realize. He realized he could now start his work after hearing the voice of the nurse from the top of the stairs. An hour elapsed. It was a long, harsh struggle. Then, as the first streaks of dawn strayed past the broken edges of the blind, the child was born, lifeless. 1 hour passed. Elapsed means passed. After 1 hour, after this long, harsh struggle, after this great effort. Struggle means great effort. So after this great effort, after 1 hour, as the first streaks of dawn. Streaks of dawn means light of morning. First rays or flash of light in the morning. To stray past means these rays were coming, deviating from the course. To stray means to come away from some place or some people. To stray past means to come through. These streaks of dawn, these rays were coming through the broken edges of the blind. Broken edges of the blind refers to sunshade. The night was gone and these first Streaks of dawn, first rays of light, were uncovering what was invisible. The sunshade. Blind refers to sunshade. The child was born, but lifeless. Lifeless means dead or looking as such, apparently dead. As he gazed at the still form, a shiver of horror passed over Andrew. Andrew gazed. He looked at the still form. Still form referring to lifeless body, the body which was not moving. As he looked at this body which was not moving, a shiver of horror passed over him. A shiver means a tremble or shake or quiver, a momentary trembling moment. This horrific shiver passed over him. He was taken by this shiver of horror upon seeing the lifeless baby. After all he had promised, he recalls that he promised that everything will be fine. So after seeing this lifeless body, Dr. Andrew was quite shocked. He says a shiver of horror passed over him. After all that he had promised all of them that everything will be fine. His face, heated with his own exertions, chilled suddenly. He hesitated, torn between his desire to attempt to resuscitate the child and his obligation towards the mother, who was herself in a desperate state. His face refers to Dr. Andrew's face. His face was heated with his own exertions. He also was quite tired. Exertion means physical or mental effort, some strain or struggle, toil. He himself was very tired. His face, which was heated with this tiredness, chilled suddenly. He hesitated, means he waited for some time, torn between his desire to attempt to resuscitate the child. Torn between the desire means to be distracted by two conflicting choices, to be in a dilemma. You could say, I'm torn between going to the mountains or going to a seashore. He hesitated, he waited for some time, and he was torn between his desire to attempt to resuscitate. Resuscitate means to revive someone from unconsciousness or apparent death. To resuscitate means to bring back to life. So, feeling these two opposite thoughts, one, the attempt to revive the child, and the other one being his obligation, his duty towards the mother, who was herself in a desperate state. Desperate means she was also in a very critical state. The dilemma was so urgent he did not solve it consciously. Blindly, instinctively, he gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention to Susan Morgan, who now lay collapsed, almost pulseless, and not yet out of the ether, upon her side. First of all, Dr. Andrew saw that the baby was not moving. He was very tired himself, and he was torn between the desire to attempt to revive the baby and the obligation towards the mother. The mother was also in a very critical state. The dilemma was so urgent. Dilemma means some difficulty or predicament, a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially ones that are equally undesirable. So the dilemma was very urgent, so urgent that he did not solve it consciously. he didn't solve it with conscious mind. He didn't do it spontaneously. He did it not in a conscious mind, but spontaneously, blindly, instinctively. Instinctively means by natural instinct. He passed the child to the nurse and then he turned his attention to Susan Morgan. Susan Morgan now laid collapsed. Collapse means having fallen down and become unconsciousness. He turned towards Susan Morgan, who was collapsed, unconscious, almost pulseless. Pulseless means not having the pulse of life, without a pulse, or appearing dead. She was not breathing, she was not having any pulse. And he says, not yet out of the ether. Ether means a liquid used as an anesthetic. Susan Morgan was there and she was in a critical condition, almost pulseless, and she was still under the anesthesia. His haste was desperate, a frantic rage, a frantic race against her ebbing strength. His haste refers to hurry. Dr. Andrew is in a hurry. His haste, his hurry was desperate. A frantic race against her ebbing strength. A frantic race means frantic stands for something that is emotionally out of control, disordered and nervous, anxiety driven, agitated. His hurry was desperate, a frantic, an agitated race against her ebbing strength. To ebb means to recede or to retreat, to diminish, to go out. It means she was receding. She was drained out of strength. She had no strength left. That is why he was in such a hurry. His haste was desperate. He was in a hurry. A frantic race, agitated race against her declining strength, the strength which was leaving her. It took him only an instant to smash a glass ampule and inject the medicine. Then he flung down the hypodermic syringe and worked unsparingly to restore the flaccid woman. After a few minutes of feverish effort, her heart strengthened. He saw that he might safely leave her. He swung around in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his damp brow. It took him only an instant. It took him only a moment to smash, to break a glass ampule, to inject the medicine. This is how the medicine is injected. The ampule is a small glass capsule containing a liquid which is ready for injecting. So he gave it the medicine, then he flung down the hypodermic syringe. To flung down means to push or throw something carelessly. He threw this hypodermic syringe. Hypodermic means relating to the region immediately beneath the skin, and syringe means a needle. So he threw down this hypodermic syringe and worked unsparingly to restore the flaccid woman. He worked unsparingly. He worked very hard and desperately to restore the flaccid woman. It means to get her back to life, to bring her back to life. Flaccid means lacking vigor, It means something which is not firm or stiff, lacking normal firmness. We could say lifeless. He threw this hypodermic syringe and worked very hard to bring this woman back to life. This lifeless woman, flaccid woman. After a few minutes of feverish effort, her heart strengthened. So after a few minutes of great effort, feverish means with a lot of energy, hectic or frenzied. After lots of effort, her heart strengthened. It became strong. And he saw that he might safely leave her. She was fine. He swung around. To swing around means to turn quickly to face another direction. He swung around in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his dumb bra. To stick means to be fixed together. He was only in his shirt without a jacket or anything. And his hair was sticking to his damp bra. Damp means moist because he was sweating. Bra refers to forehead. His forehead, a person's forehead or a temple, is called bra. His temple was sweaty. It was wet. His hair was sticking to his forehead. He was working very hard. He was working unsparingly, with feverish efforts. Where's the child? The midwife made a frightened gesture. She had placed it beneath the bed. When doctor asked, "Where is the child?" because now the mother looked fine, the midwife made this frightened gesture. She made this signal which showed that she was very nervous, very afraid. She actually placed the body beneath the bed. The newborn was beneath the bed. She had put the baby underneath the bed. In a flash, Andrew knelt down. So the midwife was very pessimistic about the baby's survival. She thought the baby was dead. And she had already placed the baby beneath the bed, thinking it is dead. In a flash means in one single moment. In a flash, Andrew knelt down. He knelt down means he went down on his knees to get the baby beneath the bed, from beneath the bed. Frightened gesture means indication with fear. She was afraid because she really thought the baby is dead. However, immediately in a flash, Dr. Andrew Manson knelt down and he started looking for the baby. Fishing among the sodden newspaper below the bed, he pulled out the child. He was fishing. Fishing refers to searching. He was trying to find this baby and get the baby out of the bed, up beneath the bed. Fishing among the sodden. Sodden means saturated with liquid, sodden. Something that is soaked. So these newspapers were soaked, sodden. He was searching among these wet newspaper below the bed, and finally he pulled out the child. A boy, perfectly formed. The limp, warm body was white and soft as tallow. The cord, hastily slashed, lay like a broken stem. The skin was of lovely texture, smooth and tender. The head lolled on the thin neck. The limbs seemed boneless. So Dr. Andrew finds the baby. It was a boy, perfectly formed. The limp, warm body was white. The limp, warm body means hobble or damaged. This little body was white and soft as tallow. Tallow means the hard fat of animals. The cord refers to the umbilical cord connecting the mother to the child in her womb. So this cord was hastily slashed. Slashed means cut or slit, as if with a knife or a sword. This cord was slashed. It was hastily slashed, means in a hurry. Hastily means hurriedly. And it lay like a broken stem. Stem referring to the part of the plant which supports the whole plant. This is what Dr. Andrew found underneath the bed. This warm body was white and soft as tallow, as this hard fat of animals. And the cord was laying like a broken stem. This cord was cut in a hurry. The skin was of a lovely texture, smooth and tender. Tender means soft. The head lolled on the thin neck. To loll means to hang. The head hung loosely on a thin neck, and the limbs seemed boneless. The limbs, the arms and legs, seemed as if there are no bones inside. Still kneeling, Andrew stared at the child with a haggard frown. The whiteness meant only one thing, asphyxia pallida, and his mind, unnaturally tense, raced back to a case he once had seen in a Samaritan, to the treatment that had been used. Instantly, he was on his feet. Dr. Andrew was still kneeling. He was staring, he was watching at the child with a haggard frown. Haggard frown means worried and tired look, drained or exhausted. Frown refers to face expression. The whiteness meant only one thing, asphyxia pallida. Asphyxia means some abnormal medical condition like a breathing impairment in a newly born baby who appears pale and limp, temporarily unable to breathe and having a slow heart action. This is what Dr. Andrew concluded, that the whiteness, the white color of the baby, meant only one thing, asphyxia pallida. It was this breathing impairment in question, and his mind, unnaturally tense, it means that was unnaturally worried. He was usually not so worried. It was not so natural for him to be tense. So his mind raced back, means he remembered something. His mind went back. He recollected one case. One case he had seen before, and he remembered the treatment that was provided, that has been used. Instantly, he was on his feet. Instantly means that very moment, immediately. He remembered something. He remembered the way he could help. "Get me hot water and cold water," he threw out to the nurse, "and basins too. Quick, quick." "But doctor," she faltered, her eyes on the pallid body of the child. "Quick," he shouted. "Get me hot water and cold water." He threw out, means he shouted out to the nurse. Nurse was the midwife. "And basins too. Quick, quick." Basins refers to containers or bowl or a pot. He asked for hot water and cold water. He will be using hot water and cold water to revive the baby. So he shouted at the nurse, "Get me hot water and cold water, and basins too, the bowls." The nurse, thinking that they are already too late, she faltered. To falter means to delay or hesitate. She hesitated, and she was having her eyes. He was looking at the baby, the pallid boy of the child. Pallid refers to lifeless or pale. She was hesitating, looking at this pale body of the child, and he again shouted, "Quick!" Snatching a blanket, he laid the child upon it and began a special method of respiration. The basins arrived, the ewer, the big iron kettle. Snatching a blanket means taking the blanket, snatching it, grabbing it from the nurse. He laid the child upon it. He had put the child to lie on the blanket after he had snatched it, grabbed it. And then he began the special method of respiration. It means he started reviving the child. Referring to the action of breathing, he started to revive the child. The basins arrived, the ewer, these containers arrived, and ewer as well. Ewer refers to a large jug with a wide mouth, formerly used for carrying water. And the big iron kettle. Kettle is a container in which the water is boiled. So all these things came, and frantically he splashed cold water into one basin, and into the other he mixed water as hot as his hand could bear. Here he will frantically splash cold water. Frantically means in some distraught way or owing to fear, desperately. He splashed cold water. It means he put cold water into one of these containers, and into the other he made a mixture. He mixed the water as hot as his hand could bear. To bear means to stand. He mixed the water so as to be hot but not too hot. The water was as hot as his hand could stand. Then, like some crazy juggler, he hurried the child between the two, now plunging it into the icy, now into the steaming bath. After that, like some crazy juggler, juggler means someone who is juggling. So he was doing many things at one time. After that, he hurried the child between the two. It means that he took the child, and first he put the child into the icy and then into the warm bath. To plunge means to immerse, to put the baby inside the water. Crazy madman or crazy juggler. So because he was doing many things. He was in a hurry because he wanted to save the baby. So he was putting the baby first into the icy water and then into the steaming bath.